Hey everyone, great to have you here with us again on VCF Breakroom Chats. I'm Alina Thailander. I'm a product marketing engineer for VMware Cloud Foundation here at Broadcom. I spend most of my time, digging into cloud infrastructure automation, especially VCF automation, which is a powerful solution that enables the self-service private clouds for things like AI, Kubernetes, and also VM-based applications. So here today we have Vincent Riccio. He is a product marketing engineer at Broadcom, and honestly, he is one of the go-to guys when it comes to VCF automation. Vincent knows all the in and outs of how companies can get most of automated private clouds and smart governance. So, whether you are still working with older virtual environments or, you're just jumping into the latest automation tools, today we'll share some solid tips to make cloud governance way easier with VCF 9.0. So if you want the real scoop on how VI admins can level up to cloud policy pros with VCF 9.0, you're in the right place. Welcome, Vincent.
Lena, it's great to be here.
Okay, so first up, what does cloud governance mean in the context of 9.0? And can we address why it's so critical for VI admins to move to cloud roles?
Yeah, great question. So, cloud governance itself, I mean, it's a pretty big term. There's a lot to it. You can look at governance from all the way from setting up infrastructure to how you deal with security, all the way to lifecycle management. But overall, I think it's sort of a template or a way of how organizations can certain behaviors, manage their infrastructure from a policy standpoint. And it's a good way to, if you have a handle on governance and so forth, you'll have an easier time passing audits and help the organization run smoothly from an IT perspective, and really about reducing risk, right? As well, data loss, stuff like that. And it's also important for admins in VCF9 in many ways. I mean, being able to control how much compute is consumed, approving certain types of workloads, providing metrics and cost data back to the business. I mean, are just kind of a few examples. But looking at automation for just a second, outside of these policies and approval policies, governance also starts with the whole automation thought process, especially when you're doing things like self-service. So VCF9 can help with the placement of workloads based on like inputs from the user. So if someone wants to deploy some workloads on, like, let's say PCI enabled or compliant infrastructure, then the system can do that based on user input. So that's one way that it can help enforce compliance.
Great. Thanks for sharing that with us. Now, how does VCF 9.0 make governance across tenants and workloads frictionless and, just easy for org admins to manage?
Yeah, so I mean, VCF9 has actually introduced some features that will actually make this much easier. I mean, with the provider portal now and more of this multi-tenant methodology being actually available, enterprise IT admins can manage organizations in this multi-tenant way. And then, and what they can do is they can distribute content. They can carve out compute and assign compute to certain what we call regions, which is an abstraction of the clusters. And within the organization, the org admins, also have an easy to use policy engine. So right there from the UI, they can go in and create the policies they need, create the blueprints that they need in order to comply with governance and things like that. And so there's also policies for things like approvals, lease times, day two actions, and the Kubernetes resources. And in
Mhm.
VCF9, we actually introduced a new policy type that's based on infrastructure as policy as code, sorry, and the Kubernetes validation and mission controls. And you can apply those to various Kubernetes objects, which we'll actually see in the demo.
It's awesome. Let's see this in action. Could you walk us through a quick demo showcasing um, how an org admin sets up policies and manages tenants in VCF 9.0?
Sure. Let me walk you through that. When an org admin logs into the system, they're going to go into the organization admin portal. In this portal, they'll be able to see all the organization policies. They'll be able to see the projects and namespaces. Now, you may have potentially in a previous chat or somehow or in our documentation that may go you may want to go look at projects and namespaces and get a little more understanding of those. But those are essentially endpoints or places where we can put users and carve up our infrastructure, and they could be targets for our policies as well as our workloads. So in this particular case, we can see the organization admin logs in and they have one project, one namespace, and we've already done role-based access in here and got our users in the organization. But policies is really where we'll kind of focus today. So what the organization administrator can do is they can go in and create new policies right from here. Now, I'm not talking about like blueprint governance and stuff. These are actually just policies that are out of the box. We see we have got approval policies that will allow admins to go in and obviously, say, if someone wants to deploy something, depending upon certain conditions, we may want to deny or approve that workload request.
Mhm.
Day two action policies can help with things that folks can do day two. So governance, you might not want folks being able to delete workloads, stuff like that. And then lease policies. Obviously, when you're doing self-service or building out private cloud, having that governance and control over how long things can live out there is very helpful. Now, one thing we also introduced here is something called the IaaS resource policy. Let me just go back and show you one that's already been created. And the IaaS resource policy basically helps us with managing certain types of, maybe like security configuration and compliance around Kubernetes resources that get deployed out of VCF automation. So here I've got a policy that is going to be applied to a specific namespace. I'm going to apply it to the production namespace specifically. And what I'm doing here is I'm essentially going to restrict all of my Kubernetes clusters to one node. And I'm actually doing this for two reasons. One, for demo purposes, but two, for practical reasons in our lab, because if we deploy large Kubernetes clusters, we tend to run out of space very quickly in our little TMM labs that we have. So we have to be pretty careful and govern how much space and compute people are using in these labs because we are so constrained sometimes. So I'm going to do that here. And then essentially, there's also these out of the box templates that you can use as well. And then I can load these up in the YAML here and then modify this if I need to. Now, what this is going to do is force the replicas to be one node. So it's enforcing that size and so forth. If I go in and try to deploy something that would have more than one replica or more than one control node, then it would fail. So those are just some policies that we have that are kind of out of the box and allow us to really apply governance at different levels. And if you notice in the product as you go through it and as you play with it, you'll see that there are ways to deploy from what we call the services UI here under build and deploy. And that would be like when you're deploying individual components, to let's say a particular namespace. But here, like under services, you might have different namespaces that you can flip back and forth to. So, just things like that that we might want to take a look at. The virtual machines, the policies will apply here, but also there's a catalog that users can also go into and request items. And we might want policies to be applied here, like lease times, especially or approvals, as folks go in here and deploy maybe various different types of objects and applications. And these users might be at different skill levels and so forth. So because different teams within our lines of businesses may be using this, having that policy and that governance is pretty helpful. And this was just one snippet of where we can do some of this, but there is more to it from even the SEC, VCF manager itself, right, and all those other components, and the operations manager. There's a lot of compliancy type activities there as well. So hopefully
Awesome.
that was helpful to at least see that part.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, always seeing a quick demo, like I bet it's super useful. Before we wrap up, I have one more question for you, and we're kind of
Sure.
switching gears a little bit. We've seen the demo, we've seen it in action. I want to address the business benefits as our last question. So I was just wondering if you can, shed some light into what are some key business benefits that organizations gain by adopting this VCF 9.0 cloud governance features.
Yeah, that's a really good question too. I mean, one thing that comes to mind for me is just really better control over infrastructure resources. Audits and compliance are easier to manage, and so we know when you fail audits or compliance, that can be costly to the business. less risk, right, of accidental catastrophes, like folks maybe accidentally deleting something that's important. So, for instance, you can have approvals that might say, "Hey, look, if you're going to delete something, we have to approve that." And built-in governance policies are also pre-configured, or you can create those in the blueprints as well, um, and then automate that self-service of these IaaS resources. So one of the big things really to me is that governance helps IT sort of keep up with the speed of business and not be a roadblock to deploying applications and services to the business in a speedy fashion, not and reducing risk, right? So that's also a big part of the governance because we can potentially get speed through various types of configurations and stuff, but to ensure that things are running smoothly in the future and reduce risk, governance is very critical.
Thank you, Vincent. Thank
Yeah.
you. This has been really helpful. So I appreciate you a lot
Yeah,
for
great.
being
Good to
here
be
with
here.
us today. Okay, so to all of you watching, thank you so much for joining us. A big shout out to Vincent for breaking down how VCF 9.0 helps VI admins level up, makes governance way easier and then gives teams the freedom they need without losing that control. So if you want to make your private cloud life a lot simpler and get things done, definitely check out what VCF 9.0 has to offer. We'll be back soon with more tips and more demos. This is Alina Thailander, your host, signing off. Until we meet again, stay bright and keep smiling.